Welcome everybody to Forza Horizon 4. Today we're taking a look at the 1974 Honda Civic RS. Now this was part of the first generation of the Civic that was produced between 1972 and 1979. And yeah, despite it being the RS version, which is undoubtedly the top of the line version of the generation of that period, it had the smallest engine on offer, but it was also the most powerful, and it's easily one of the most sporty looking version of the Civic from that time. And yeah, it was pretty much made to compete against the US domestic compact cars like the Chevrolet Vega and the Ford Pinto. But unlike those two cars, this was far smaller and far lighter than those vehicles. Now granted, it didn't have rear wheel drive like those two cars did, and those two cars did have more powerful engines and bigger engines than this, but they still had to deal with all that extra weight, which this didn't, because yeah, it's really rather quite small, as you can see, and it's quite cute in how small it is. Actually, I actually quite like the look of it in from the front. The side profile is pretty good, and even though the back is a little bit, 70s in how it looks, it's still rather decent. Interior wise, it's actually pretty good. Actually, I was surprised by how different interior wise it is to other vehicles of the period. I really rather like the concave dashboard with the wood like that. I really do like that. It's quite neat. It's not something you'd ever see really on cars like this. I also like the fact that the two main dials are in one pod, and then you've got your temperature and your fuel in two little ones on the left there, and then you've got your clock over near where the passenger would sit. And yeah, it's really rather decent spacious in here for a car of its size. Where it falls down a little bit is the boot, which for whatever reason isn't a full hatch, it's a split hatch, which to me seems a bit pointless really, because it reduces the width of the gap that you have to put things in, and it also means that you have to squeeze things in over such a high tailgate, while at the same time I don't think you can actually put the rear seats down. So as a hatchback, it's not the most practical thing out there. The GTI, the Volkswagen Golf, which came out around the same period as this, is certainly a far more practical vehicle, and the Golf GTI, which came out a year after this, is certainly the more powerful hot hatchback out there. But at the end of the day, it's only got 1,620 pounds to deal with. So despite the fact it's only got a 1.2 litre inline 4 engine producing 76 horsepower and 75 pounds-feet of torque, means it's got very little in the way of weight to carry around. It's easily one of the lightest front-wheel drive sporty kind of cars on this game. So yeah, doesn't have all that much weight to lug around, and yeah, as a result it's far quicker than you'd expect a car from the early 70s with only a 1.2 litre engine to be. But unfortunately this was plagued by rust problems back in the day, to the point where they had to actually be recalled. I think nearly 1 million of them had to be recalled because the rust issues were so bad. It wasn't just affecting the fenders or anything like that, it was also affecting suspension components underneath the car. So yeah, in the US it had to be recalled for rust issues, because yeah, salt really did damage the metalwork in this vehicle, which is a shame really, because yeah, it's quite a fun car to drive, and quite a cute looking vehicle as well, even if it isn't the most practical small car out there. Nonetheless, let's get out onto the open road and see what it can do. So yeah, with only 76 horsepower, it's never going to be the most fastest vehicle you're ever going to see on a game, or even in this category of car. But despite that, because it doesn't weigh all that much, it's a really rather chuckable vehicle. It handles really rather well as well, and yeah, it's even got a decent sounding engine, though it's not the best sounding inline 4 engine you're ever going to hear, but nonetheless, it hardly sounds awful, and yeah, really rather quite fun to drive as well. Which I guess is a key thing with a vehicle like this. You won't buy a top of the line small hot hatchback like this for it to be slow, because the other versions of this car had about 52 horsepower, so you've got more power and not very much in the way of weight, and as a result it can do 0 to 60 in 9.6 seconds, 0 to 100 in 46.022 seconds, and going to a top speed of 110 miles an hour, which is fairly good, to be honest. I really have no problem with those acceleration times at all. Granted, to 100 is a bit of a slog, but most inline 4 engines from this time period really were. You'd be really scratching the surface to try and find a car that can do 0 to 100 in less than 20 seconds at this period with an engine of this size. So yeah, it's a really decent in terms of acceleration, and that top speed is really rather good as well. and at the end of the day, it's fun to drive no matter what the speed really. Be you doing 110 or 70, it's still a really rather fun car to drive. And yeah, to be honest, I never heard of this version of this Civic before. And quite frankly, I was a bit, ignorant to how old the Civic actually was. So I was not only surprised to know that it is a car that can trace its roots back to the 1972, but also had this sporty version as well. So yeah, really pleased that this is in the game, to be honest. And yeah, I wish we had more Japanese cars like this that either are a little bit rarer or a little bit less unknown, or not as well represented on a game like this, to be honest. Because yeah, really a bit surprised by how much I enjoyed it. When I saw that it only had 76 horsepower upon first viewing, I was like, oh, it's going to be slow, it's not going to be all that fun to drive, but it's the complete opposite. And yeah, glad it's on the game, and I hope it's going to be in future Forza games, to be honest, because yeah, Morden deserves that kind of place as far as I'm concerned, because yeah, it's everything that I'd like from a small lightweight hatchback. Fun to drive, reasonably powerful, reasonably quick, and yeah, decent looking. Nonetheless, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.